Name is, what is it? It's
Barry
Weiss.
You can
Barry
look her up.
Weiss. Yeah, y'all look her up. And Barry Weiss. And she was really awesome. Did an interview with us, and it's going to be. I think it's going to be in more of a
Magazine.
magazine. So that will be awesome. Barry Weiss is cool. Drew is an Asian mafia boss. We will be sure to tell him that.
Chest hair and beers for Yang.
Oh my gosh, that hurt so bad. I mean, I didn't have a whole lot.
Oh, but what I was saying about the polls, I've been trying to get this out. When they poll people about healthcare, most people say they'd rather keep that option to keep their private insurance. You know, to have the option to and not be forced out. Most people, it polls at something like, what, 60% of the people? When they give them 4 different choices, that's the one that's the highest. So Andrew Yang knows what he's doing. And, like, you can't, like you said, you can't just come right out and be like, make it all illegal.
It's math, y'all. It's data. I'm going to turn this around for a second.
And freedom.
So if y'all are just joining us, here's where Andrew Yang will be speaking at the pub here, at the brewery. And that one thing I've also noticed about New Hampshire is they take their breweries very serious. They love their beer up here, for sure. So that is where he's going to be standing here in just a couple minutes, actually. He should already be here. We are at the Two Share Brewing Company.
They are a new brewery, just opened up a year ago.
Yes, and if y'all are down here, or
in
up this way
Manchester.
rather, in Manchester, y'all definitely give this place your patronage, because dude is really awesome, and
Most of it.
very, very Yang friendly. Their beer, I'm about to get one. Somebody just bought us a beer, so that is awesome. My chest hair will be the documentary. That would be
That's
hilarious.
funny. I like how he automatically assumed that you had chest hair. That was funny. He just assumed it was there. He's like, I know you have chest hair, so.
Because I'm a manly man. I'm not saying that men who don't have chest hair are less men.
I mean, chest hair is fine as long as it's not like a forest chest hair.
It's from the
right?
beer. That's what beer will do for you, y'all. When you drink beer, it puts hair on your chest. As long as you drink responsibly and somebody else buys it. I'm just playing. I'm going to give y'all a shot. I'm going to walk up here to the stage real quick before Andrew gets started. I'm going to give y'all a shot. Oh. Give y'all a shot. So here, good shot of the crowd, y'all. And they are still coming in, just so y'all know. I'm steady seeing people come in. We got some familiar faces, and we've got some very not familiar faces. Now, I want y'all to take a look at this. And this is very important, because what you're seeing here is not a lot of math here. And if you know anything about the Yang Gang is going to be out here in their math gear, right? So that means that there are a lot of undecided voters here, and they're going to be Yang by the time that this is over, y'all, because you can't listen to Andrew Yang talking and not be. So we're looking forward to a lot of new Yang Gang members, for sure. But I just wanted to give y'all a shot of the crowd so that y'all knew it's probably a very Yang curious crowd. And when Steve Marchand gets up there, he will definitely be asking. So you'll be able to see exactly how many people here are Yang curious and how many people are actually Yang Gang. Because everywhere we've been to here in New Hampshire so far, it's always been probably 70-30 split. Yang Gang versus non-Yang Gang. And that's very encouraging, because that means all these voters are going to be voting for Andrew Yang. So what we're going to do is we're going to take you back over here to the camera frame, which I got to talk to y'all something about some Yang Gang, because this is crazy. Last time, if y'all were watching the live stream, how many of y'all were on there and y'all remember that we did have this little piece right here? This is the piece that y'all were going for, right? That was out in the car that y'all went with Mama Yang Gang, and none of y'all's eyes saw that piece. Come on, y'all. Y'all got to do better than that, Yang Gang. That piece was in there. I ended up having to hold that camera the whole time. We love you, Yang Gang. For sure. I'm going to put you back on the camera stand. So I just wanted to give y'all a shot of the crowd.
Oh, great. We're under a snow squall warning.
Snow squall warnings, y'all.
Great. That's what we need, some snow squalls.
Some snow squalls. So, we
Oh, by the way, when we moved up here, we had no idea what a snow squall was. Never heard of it before.
I'd heard of it. We're both from Ohio, but she was really, really young when she moved. And I'm trying to get this close. I'm trying to get back in my spot. And Mama Yang Gang is in my spot. Over there. And I can't get her. So I guess I'll talk to you from here. Let you see the crowd. It is very, very much crowded. And it's only getting more crowded. And I left my business cards out in the car. It sucks. Yes, because I definitely need those. I hand them out everywhere I go. They got Andrew Yang on one side, Grassroots Yang Gang on the other. We want to see the people while Andrew speaks. Well, you know what? We all want a lot of stuff. The North remembers. We are the North. My people all came from cold climates anyway, so it's all good. No Montana wild hat. I will not grow my upper lip hair. I can't do it. Can't do it. And it's. You want to know why I don't have upper lip hair? Because when I was growing up, y'all, my mom was friends with a lady who was deaf, and she communicated by reading people's lips. And so I always shaved it off so that she would be able to read my lips without any trouble. So, and I've always kept it that way because she's not the only deaf person out there. So I don't know. Maybe there's somebody who's hearing impaired that reads lips that watches this channel. And if they do, they'll be able to see what I'm saying, at least partially. I know I talk fast sometimes. Why do I keep getting Abraham Lincoln comments? That is nuts, y'all.
Okay, I'm back. Just yanging. Okay.
So, anyway, yes. They asked why I never grew hair on my earth. They wanted me to grow hair on my earth, but I told the story why.
Because it's spiky. No, that's not the story.
No, I told you the story before. Growing up, my mom's friend was hearing impaired, she was deaf, and that's how she read lips.
All right.
Oh.
How y'all doing tonight?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, all I could think
One of
about.
my jobs is to make sure you are properly warmed up. So I'm going to try to warm you up. How y'all doing tonight? Okay. So I hope you want to meet the next president of the United States because it'd be really convenient since he's going to be here in like 3 minutes.
Yeah!
How about that? My name's Steve Barshand. I am from this wonderful city of Manchester. Used to be the mayor of Portsmouth. I ran for governor last year. This just in, I did not win. Or else there would be burly security people here and you would be intimidated briefly and then you would not be. But good thing is it meant I got to meet a year ago this coming Saturday, Andrew Yang. How many of you here have seen him in person before? Okay, trick question now. How many of you have not seen him in person before tonight? Yeah, New Hampshire, that's what I like. 3 months ago, the ratio would have been flipped. And it would have been almost entirely established members of the Yang Gang.
Yeah.
So let me check. How many of you here would consider yourself Yang Gang right now?
Yeah!
Okay, how many of you would call yourself, and we're among friends, Yang Curious? Yes, we have another name in this world for Yang Curious. It's soon to be Yang Gang.
That's
the
right.
other name. Before we go any further, I hope you have purchased a beverage, or you plan to purchase a beverage, because Aaron and Jen, Cher, could you raise your hand? They have been here for about a year. Entrepreneurs who stuck their neck out so that you can imbibe with some high quality, locally brewed beverage. Please enjoy a beverage, not too many, especially if you're going to follow us to Merrimack after this. We got another town hall tonight at Merrimack High School at 7:30, and there won't be any beer there. And then if you really like it, you can actually buy some of the product, and they have examples of it here on the bar. So please consider them, and give them a round of applause again for their generosity to allow us to be here tonight. So back early last year, we met at the Bridge Street Cafe, and I realized in moments that I like this guy. 44-year-old, first generation American, father of two, really likes math. I'm like, holy crap, that's me. And that was the friendship that began very early. A couple months later, we started working together, and by around April 1st, was an advisor on the campaign. And I tell you what, he and my cohorts, our state director, Christina Snell, our wonderful staff, they're making that decision look smarter and smarter every day. You don't have to be worried about answering this question. Anybody here vote for Donald Trump in 2016?
Yeah, we did.
Right on.
Yeah.
Right? There are very few places where a Democratic candidate for president will be appearing where people that voted for Donald Trump in 2016 would feel comfortable appearing. One of the reasons I signed on with Andrew is I have, in 20 years of being involved in New Hampshire politics, I have never seen the ideological diversity of people that voted for Trump, and Bernie, and Hillary, and Jill Stein, and Gary Johnson, people that had given up on voting, people that had never voted before, people that thought that it didn't matter if they voted or not, that through Andrew, see somebody new and different and authentic and exciting, youthful and diverse, in my opinion, my strong opinion, the face of what the future of America looks like. We got an important election this November. You may have heard the news. And here's the thing. There was a Trump supporter at one event I went to early after signing with Andrew who said, here's the thing. I am here. He had a MAGA shirt. I said, are you aware you are with an Asian man who wants to give everybody $1,000 a month? Have you arrived at the correct event? And he said, I have. Why? Because he says Donald Trump was the wrong answer to the right question. Andrew Yang, right answer to the right question. And that question, how come they keep telling us things are going so well with GDP and inflation and the stock market and unemployment, and yet for the vast majority of Americans, it's like walking an economic tightrope with no safety net. Now you hear some people cheering outside, and it's not because they can hear me, because A, they can, and B, it would not create that kind of reaction. It is because I believe Andrew has arrived. So he's going to say hi to the folks out there real quick. That's pretty cool. Actually, can you look out there? Can you see that?
Give them high
There's some
fives.
pictures of that.
See them?
I can't.
This is what's happening more and more. A few months ago, there were
There's-
seats left in rooms like this.
Standing outside.
And now there is no room in the parking lot outside.
That
We've
is
got
awesome.
rooms of hundreds and hundreds of people that will be flooding towns like
There he is.
Peterborough and Merrimack and Bedford and Portsmouth over the next several days. This is our first of 19 events between now and late Sunday
Out
afternoon.
there.
I'm really lucky that I met this guy. Are you guys ready? Are you guys ready to get jacked up? Are you ready to tell your friends after this event that you just met the next president of the United States? Are you ready to secure the bag?
Yeah.
Well, that did it. That got it done. 6 months ago, I had never heard that expression before. And my kids are like, come on. And I'm like, it's Andrew Yang. Now my kids are talking about Andrew Yang. I got my 14 and 16-year-old daughters jacked up about Andrew Yang. They didn't give a crap about politics. And I'm their dad. Andrew Yang has been able to do for my kids what I could not do for my kids. He got them genuinely excited about getting involved in the electoral process and the future of the country. And now, I think, do I see him turning the corner?
Yeah, he's going to.
Or is he mobbed? He turned the corner? Good. He turned the corner. The country needs to turn the corner. And luckily we got the guy to do it. Let me just peek outside. It's like Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. Yeah, holy crap, he's right there. And when he opens the door, I get to do the big outro. And until he opens the door, I don't know how long it'll take to do the big outro. But that's the music. Return of the Mac, the entry of the Mac. Ladies and gentlemen, behind door number 1, the longest sentence with as many commas and dependent clauses as I can create to make this seem natural. My friend. Your friend? Yep. Anybody who's not friends yet? Your friend's friend? Look. Oh, there we go. Hey guys, here's the next president. It's Andrew Yang.
Hello, Manchester! How the heck are you? Oh, wow. It's so tremendous to be back here in New Hampshire. It's like I never left. I want to give a shout out to Aaron and Jen, the Share Brewing Company, for hosting us tonight. Let's give them a round of applause. I love small businesses so much, and when I saw their last name was actually Share, I was like, no way. I thought Share was like, you know, sharing the beer, but instead it's actually Jen and Aaron's names. It's great to be back here in New Hampshire. I went to high school here in the state. How many of you knew that? Yeah, I graduated from Phillips Exeter Academy in 1992. They just had me back to speak 6 months ago. I said, it's my first time back since I graduated because I didn't really enjoy my time here. And then the student body erupted in applause. And I was like, oh my gosh, that wasn't the intended reaction. But after I graduated from high school here, I went to college and then law school and then practiced law for 5 months and then left to start a business. And that's one reason I love Jen and Aaron and entrepreneurs around the country so much. How many of you all have started a business or organization or a club or a mailing list? So if you have your hand up, you know a couple things. Number one, it's much harder than anyone ever lets on. And number two, when someone asks you how it's going, what do you say?
It's going good.
It's going great. Everything always is going great. My business went great until it failed. My parents told their friends I was still a lawyer because, well, they're Asian among other things. But I've been bitten by the bug. I tried to figure out how to build a business. I worked for another startup and then another, and then I became the head of an education company that grew to become number one in the United States and was bought in 2009. 2009 was the financial crisis. How many of you were here in New Hampshire 10 years ago during the financial crisis? How was that time for you in this part of the state? Depressing, tough. I was here in New Hampshire last week, and I asked that question, and this 14-year-old boy raised his hand and said it was really hard, and I looked at him, I said, you must have been 4 years old, like, how do you remember this? And then he said, my family had to sell our house, so I remember, and I was like, yeah, that would really make an impact. The financial crisis was devastating for so much of the country, and I thought I had some insight as to why our economy had crashed. It was in part because a lot of the wannabe whiz kids I'd gone to Exeter and Brown and Columbia with had gone straight to Wall Street and come up with mortgage-backed securities and derivatives and exotic financial instruments that had crashed the economy. So I thought, what a disaster that is. Let's have everyone try and do the opposite of that. And so I thought the opposite, is it the Russians? They always trying to hack my events. They sense I'm coming for their guy. All right. So I thought, what would you want people to do if you could draw it up from scratch? And I wanted them to do what Aaron and Jen have done and what so many other people want to do, which is start a business in a part of the country that could use the vitality and growth. So I left my job to start a nonprofit called Venture for America. How many of you all work in nonprofits now? I'm sure some of you. How many of you all volunteer for a nonprofit? You should really just pretend and raise your hand to that second one. It's like, that's pretty much like, are you a good person? And you're like, yes, I am, that one time. So this is where I give full credit to my wife, because I was a pretty normal guy when we met and started dating, and then I was like, hey, how about I quit my job and start a nonprofit? And she was like, oh, this is new. And so the way I started a nonprofit is I put up some money, and then I started calling rich friends with this question: do you love America? Then the smart among them said, what does it mean if I say yes to this question? And I said at least $10,000. And then 12 of them said, I love America for 10,000. It's like, I thought you did. So that's how I started a nonprofit that I ran for 7 years, grew to the millions, helped create several thousand jobs around the country in 15 cities like Detroit, Cleveland, St. Louis, Birmingham, Providence, cities around the country. Now, how many of you grew up here in New England, or let's say upstate New York like me? How about Midwest? Look at that, look at that. South, West Coast or Mountain West. So I was blown away when I traveled to Missouri and Alabama and Louisiana and Michigan, because the gulf between regions of this country just blew my mind. It was much more extreme than anything I'd imagined. Where if you fly between Michigan and Manhattan or St. Louis and San Francisco, you feel like you're crossing dimensions and ways of life and not just going a few time zones. But I was still stunned when Donald Trump became our president in 2016. How did you all react when he won that night? Tears. Wow, suicidality, I mean, it's very dark. Disbelief and shock, right? Now, to me, it was a giant red flag that tens of millions of our fellow Americans decided to take a bet on the narcissist reality TV star as our president. I mean, that's not business as usual. And even if you were stunned and sad or in shock, we all have family members and friends and neighbors who celebrated his victory. So the question I was hit by after he won was, how did he win? Like, what caused his victory? If you were to turn on cable news that night or any night since then, why would you think that Donald Trump is our president today? Russia. Yeah, well, yeah, that's why I made the Russia joke, right?
Electoral college.
Electoral college, Russia.
We're tired of the political situation.
Politicians have not been getting it done.
Facebook.
Facebook and social media. Racism. Ignorance. Hillary Clinton and emails probably gets mixed in there too, right? FBI. And so that's the cocktail of reasons that we've been presented with for the last number of months. But I'm a numbers guy, and there's a very clear explanation in the numbers that said it all. We automated away 4 million manufacturing jobs over the last number of years that were primarily based where? Ohio, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Missouri, Iowa. And if that list of states sounds familiar, those are all the swing states that Donald Trump needed to win and did win in 2016. The same thing happened in New Hampshire, but it happened a bit earlier. You all lost more than 12,000 manufacturing jobs, primarily in the northern part of the state. I have been to those towns. I imagine many of you have been to those towns. And after the plant closes, the shopping district closes, people start to leave, the school shrinks, and that community never recovers. That is the story that's played out over and over again in communities in Ohio, Michigan, Iowa, Western Pennsylvania, even northern New Hampshire. So these are the numbers that to me said it all. And I went through the voter district data. There's a straight line up between the adoption of industrial automation in a voter district and the movement towards Trump. The strongest correlation anyone can find. So here I was, someone who was being celebrated by the Obama White House for helping create thousands of jobs. I got to bring my wife to meet the president. So my in-laws were very excited about me for about a week. They had like these pictures and like, oh, our daughter did okay. Check this out. So I was like Mr. Job Creation, and then I realized that my work is like pouring water into a bathtub that had a giant hole ripped in the bottom. And this hole is just getting wider and wider. Because what happened to these manufacturing jobs is now shifting to other parts of our economy. How many of you have noticed stores closing around where you live here in New Hampshire? And why are those stores closing? Amazon, one word answer really. Amazon's soaking up $20 billion in business every single year, causing 30% of America's stores and malls to close. Pier 1 just said it's going to close 450 stores. Macy's just said it's going to shed 1,000 plus jobs. It's just ripping through retail. They're calling it the retail apocalypse. Most common job in the country is retail clerk. Average retail clerk is a 39-year-old woman making between $8 and $10 an hour. What is her next job when the store closes?
Amazon.
Amazon, she's laughing. Now, maybe she could go to the nearest fulfillment center and say, hey, I'm here to put some stuff in boxes. But if you go to those Amazon fulfillment centers, they're half automated now. Like you have all the robots. And then the people that work in those fulfillment centers have these bracelets that monitor how many things they put in boxes every single minute, essentially. And everyone's essentially on notice that we're trying to automate you from day one. The commercials don't say that. And Amazon commercials like a smiley face, but then you look at the data and like workplace injuries through the roof, you know, that like they have all sorts of problems. That's the most common job in the country, and it's disappearing very fast. How much did Amazon pay in federal taxes last year? Zero. That is your math, New Hampshire. 20 billion out, zero back. 30% of stores closed, most common job disappears. You've all seen the self-serve kiosks in the CVS and the grocery store and the McDonald's, but it's more pervasive than that. When you call the customer service line of a big company and you get the bot or software on the other line, what do? You dial 000, representative, human, 000 until you get someone, right? How many of you do that? Oh yeah, software is miserable. As soon as you hear it, you're like, oh no. And you try and get a human on the line. In 2 or 3 short years, the software is gonna sound like this. Hey Andrew, how's it going? What can I do for you? It'll be fast, peppy, efficient. You might not even know it's software. What is that gonna mean for the 2.5 million Americans who work at call centers right now making $14 an hour? How many of you know a truck driver here in New Hampshire? It's the most common job in 29 states. My friends in California are working on robot trucks that can drive themselves. A robot truck just transported 20 tons of butter from California to Pennsylvania with no human intervention about 3 weeks ago. Why did they choose butter? I have no idea. Maybe there's like a giant stack of pancakes in Pennsylvania, but the robot trucks are coming. What is that gonna mean for the 3.5 million? Oh wow, hey guys. They look like the opposite of Russians. Look very, very American. I like how they don't take no for an answer. That's right, it's the American spirit. That's how we're gonna win. So if robot trucks hit the highways in earnest in the next 5 to 10 years, which they tell me they will, what is that gonna mean for the 3.5 million truck drivers in our country, or the 7 million Americans who work at truck stops, motels, and diners that rely upon the truckers getting out and having a meal every day? You can think about our highways, it's almost like a circulatory system, and the trucks are like blood cells, and they carry this cargo. But one of the things they do is they stop in way stations around the country, and that forms communities. 10% of the jobs in Nebraska support trucking. What happens when the trucks don't need to stop in Nebraska anymore? We're in the midst of the greatest economic transformation in the history of our country, what experts are calling the fourth industrial revolution. When's the last time you heard a politician say the words fourth industrial revolution? 3 seconds ago. And I'm barely a politician, New Hampshire. So these are the facts and figures that I was going through in 2017. Trump wins, I'm like, stop the presses, what just happened? And then I realized that this curve is about to take off. AI is about to leave the labs and start ripping through organizations. So I took this to our leaders in DC, and I said, what are we gonna do to help our people manage this transition? And what do you think the folks in DC said when I said, what are we gonna do? I was in an event 2 days ago, and someone imitated that Scooby-Doo noise. They're like, oh. The 3 big answers I got out of DC were, number 1, we cannot talk about this, Andrew. Number 2, we should study this further. Number 3, we must educate and retrain all Americans for the jobs of the future. How many of you have heard a politician say that? That one you might have heard, right? And I said, look, I looked at the studies. You all want to guess how effective the government-funded retraining programs were for the manufacturing workers who lost their jobs in the Midwest? You instinctively know the number is low. I'm anchoring you low. It is low. It's 0 to 15%. They're a total dud. Half of the workers that lost their jobs in those plants never worked again. And of that group, half filed for disability. You then saw surges in suicides and drug overdoses in those communities, to the point where our nation's life expectancy has now declined for the last 3 years in a row. Do you all want to know the last time America's life expectancy declined for 3 years in a row? Depression is what people think, but it's earlier than that. It's the Spanish flu of 1918. That's right. Looks like an historian. Global pandemic that killed millions. It was the last time America's life expectancy declined for 3 years in a row. It's highly unusual for life expectancy to ever decline in a developed country. It ordinarily just keeps going up and up because you're getting richer, stronger, healthier. In the US, it's gone down and down and down. So when I said this to the folks in DC, they said, well, I guess we'll get better at it then. And then they just went back to what they were doing. And one person said something that brought me here to you all in Manchester tonight. He said, Andrew, you're in the wrong town. No one here is going to do anything about this because fundamentally this is a town of followers and not leaders. And the only way we will do anything about it is if you were to create a wave in other parts of the country and bring that wave crashing down on our heads. And I said, challenge accepted. I'll be back in 2 years. And that was 2 years ago, New Hampshire, and here we are. And so I stand before you today, fifth in the polls and rising to be the Democratic nominee. We raised $16.5 million in the last quarter in increments of only $35 each. So my fans are almost as cheap as Bernie's. Zero corporate PAC money, all grassroots funding, all people-powered donations, because people recognize that, like this woman said, DC has not been up to the challenge for years now. It's one big reason why Trump is our president today. Washington, D.C. today is the richest city in our country. Think about that for a sec. What do they produce?
Debt.
Whatever they produce, business is good. But it's not working for the rest of the country. And you all are among the most powerful people in our country today. I know it doesn't feel like that because you're just living your lives here in New Hampshire and you come see a presidential candidate speak. But I'm going to give you one data point as to how powerful you are. Go ahead and hold up fingers as to how many presidential candidates you've seen speak this cycle. So this would be 4, it'd be like 15, would be like that. So you get 5s, 12, 8, 6, 6, 1. I like the 1s because it makes me feel special. It's like I was the only candidate to get you out of the house. It makes me very happy. The reason why all the candidates come to you is because you have the future of the country in your hands. You alone can do something the rest of the country only dreams about, which is you can flush the pipes clean of all that lobbyist cash that's just gunking it up and clogging the works. You all can present a new vision to the rest of the country that actually will spread like wildfire in just a few short weeks. That's why it's such a joy and privilege to campaign here every single time. I did the math. Do you know how many Californians each New Hampshire voter is worth? 1,000 each. That's right. So if you look around this room tonight, how many of us are there? I'm going to give a Trumpian estimate. There are 750 people in this room tonight. I actually know that there's a fire code here, and it's 100. So there are 99 people in this room tonight. But even 99 would be 2.5 football stadiums full of Californians. That is the power in this room. That is the power to change the future of this country. And the question is, how are we going to rewrite the rules of the 21st century economy to work for our people, to work for us, to work for our families? That is your challenge and your responsibility. You have a big company like Amazon, this $1 trillion tech company that paid 0 in taxes. It's up to you to change it. It's up to you to get our fair share back from Amazon and put it into your hands. There is no other group of people that can do it. It's you or bust. If you decide to flush the pipes and say, hey, it's not acceptable for a $1 trillion tech company to pay less in taxes than everyone here tonight, then we can turn it around and make it happen. We can take our tiny fair share of every Amazon sale, every Google search, every Facebook ad, every robot truck mile, and then put it into our own hands. Now, if you're here tonight, at some point you heard that there's a man running for president who wants to give everyone $1,000 a month. Remember that? That's oh, good. Glad that it's gone through. Maybe you've even seen ads on TV. Nice. That means, because we spend a lot of money on those ads. I'd have to fire someone if no one raised their hand there. I'd be like, hey guys, it's some pretty bad at spending. So the first time you heard this $1,000 a month idea, I know you thought, that's a gimmick, that will never happen, that's literally too good to be true. But this is not my idea and it's not a new idea. Thomas Paine was for it at the founding of our country. He called it the Citizens' Dividend for all Americans. How many of you knew that? Nice, yes. Because of me, great. Was that an ad? That'd be great. We have like Thomas Paine's head. I don't have time for that. Martin Luther King was for this in the 60s, called it the guaranteed minimum income, and it is what he was fighting for when he was killed in 1968. I had the privilege of sitting with Martin Luther King's son, who said this is what his dad was fighting for. And that was a thrill to hear, but it was also a thrill to hear someone call Martin Luther King dad. I was like, wow, it's amazing. It's called him dad. 1,000 economists endorsed this in the 60s, and it passed the US House of Representatives twice in 1971 under Richard Nixon. It's called the Family Assistance Plan, with a guaranteed an income floor for all Americans. Then 11 years later, one state passed a dividend where now everyone in that state gets between $1,000 and $2,000 a year, no questions asked. And what state is that? Alaska. Then how does Alaska pay for it? And what is the oil of the 21st century? Data, technology, AI, self-driving cars and trucks. A study just came out that said that our data is now worth more than oil. How many of you saw that study? How many of you got that data check in the mail last month? If our data is now worth billions a year, who's getting the money? Facebook, Amazon, Google, Apple, and the mega tech companies that are paying zero or near zero in taxes. Do you see the game, New Hampshire? We're getting sucked dry by these companies that are selling and reselling our data over and over again, closing 30% of our stores and malls, putting many of the traditional employers out of business. If self-driving trucks hit the highways, how much new tax revenue will we get from that? Zero. Because who's going to own the AI and the self-driving truck software? The big tech companies that are paying zero in taxes. This is our challenge right now, to change this. If we take our fair share of every Google ad and Amazon sale and the rest of it and put it in our hands, we can pay for $1,000 a month really, really quickly. Very, very fast. There's a giant up arrow attached to how much value that's getting generated out of these technologies, but we're just not seeing a dime. That's what we have to change, and if we take this dividend and put it in our hands, build a trickle-up economy from our people, our families, and our communities up, where will that money actually go in real life after you have it in your hands each month? To breweries. You hear that, Aaron and Jen? That's right. They're going to come right here to Share Brewing Company and being like, it's dividend time, and start throwing back. They'll buy rounds for other people. Other people will be like, you don't even need to buy it for me. I got my dividend too. And they'll clink. So, how much of it, well, first of all, how much of it will stay right here in New Hampshire?
Most of it.
Most all of it. Not all of it. A little bit of it will float up to the cloud. You might get your own Netflix password instead of just passing the same one around the whole town. But most all of it will go to this brewing company and car repairs you've been putting off and daycare expenses and Little League signups and local nonprofits and religious organizations. This is how we can supercharge our regional economy so that it works for us. Make us stronger, healthier, mentally healthier, less stressed out. This is the trickle-up economy that we must build. Donald Trump is our president in part because if you were born in the 1940s in the United States of America, first, congratulations, that's pretty good. But if you were born in the 1940s, there's a 93% chance that you're going to be better off than your parents. That's the American dream. That's what we've all hoped to live. If you were born in the 1990s, which I sense is many of you, you're down to a 50-50 shot and it's declining fast. That is why, if you're a parent like me and my wife Evelyn, you've had this sinking feeling that our kids are inheriting a future that is not as bright as the lives that we've led. You know why we feel that way? Because it is that way. It's right there in the numbers. We're setting our kids up for a darker future than they deserve, and we can do better. We must do better. I'm not running for president because I dreamt about being president. I'm running for president because, like many of you here tonight, I'm a parent and a patriot. I've seen the future that lies ahead for our kids, and it's not something I'm willing to accept. They deserve better.
That's all right.
So we can turn this around very quickly by making it so that it's not that we all work for the machines, but the machines work for us. And right now, the biggest source of confusion in American life, right, is that people are being told everything is great. You turn on the TV and what does it say? Stock market prices, great. Corporate profits, great. GDP, great. Headline unemployment, great. And then you look around your own families and communities and you're like, why does it not seem like things are great? So you have record high corporate profits right now in the United States. You know what else are record highs? Stress, financial insecurity, mental illness, depression, suicides, drug overdoses. If corporate profits are up and your life expectancy is down, which do you listen to? Now think about that one, right? We know which one DC is paying attention to. DC can't even see people in life expectancy. It's just seeing dollar signs. That place has been bought and sold. Donald Trump said he wanted to drain the swamp, and he was not entirely wrong. My plan is to distribute the swamp. So what do I mean by that? Why are we employing tens, hundreds of thousands of government employees in the most expensive city in the country? Why don't we move those jobs to places like Ohio and Michigan and New Hampshire, and places that frankly are much lower cost? You save billions of dollars off the bat. And I would argue that the decisions they make would be better because they actually live someplace normal and not in the DC bubble just talking to each other.
Yeah.
So you have these economic measurements that are leading us off a cliff. And we need measurements that actually tell us how we are doing. And I know how wrong the measurements are based upon my own family. My wife is at home right now with our two boys, one of whom is autistic. How much is her work calculated out in our economic measurements every year? Zero. She gets a zero. Stay-at-home parents, zero. Anyone taking care of an aging loved one, caregivers, nurturers, zero. Volunteers, activists, coaches, mentors, zero. Artists, 98% of the time, also a zero. Journalists, increasingly. We put 2,000 local newspapers out of business in the last number of months because all of their classified ads went up to the internet. How can you have a functioning democracy if you don't have any local news? Studies have shown that you can't. That local democracy corrodes very quickly if they don't have any news source in that community. These are the things that we're supposed to value most highly in our lives. Family, community, democracy, and we're allowing them to get zeroed out one by one. And we're allowing them to get zeroed out because of this confusion, that we have begun to mistake economic value and human value and say they are the same things. And that's what we have to change, New Hampshire. We have to let people know that we have intrinsic value as citizens, as Americans, and as people. I know what my son is worth. I know what my wife's work is worth every day. And that is the vision we have to take to the rest of the country and make real in 4.5 short weeks.
Shoot. Let's do it, man.
And that's the power in your hands. That's the great thing about it. That's why I love New Hampshire, is that you can make all this happen just like that. All you have to do is show up and say, yes, we like the vision of an economy that works for us and our kids. We think that better measurements than corporate profits and GDP would be things like our own wellness and life expectancy, mental health and freedom from substance abuse, proportion of elderly who can retire in quality circumstances, clean air and clean water. These are the ways we should be measuring our progress in the 21st century. And as your president, I would make these the new measurements of our economy and then present them to you each year at the State of the Union. I'd be the first president to use a PowerPoint deck at the State of the Union. Donald Trump's our president today because he had a very simple message. He said he was going to make America great again. And what did Hillary Clinton say in response? America's already great. Remember that, New Hampshire? I know, it's been a long 3 years. But it is about to end.
That's right.
And that response did not go over well because the problems are real. The suffering is real. We have to acknowledge the severity and depth of these problems, but then we need solutions that will actually move the country forward. What were Donald Trump's solutions? build a wall, turn the clock back, bring the old jobs back. New Hampshire, we have to do the opposite of these things. We have to turn the clock forward. We have to accelerate our economy and society to rise to the real challenges of this time. We have to evolve in the way we think about ourselves and our work and our value. I'm the ideal candidate for this job because the opposite of Donald Trump is an Asian man who likes math. Thank you all very much. You may not know this, but math is an acronym. What does it stand for?
Make America think harder.
Make America think harder. That's right. That's your job, New Hampshire. It's your job to move this country, not left, not right, but forward on February 11th, and I know you'll do just that. Let's make history together.
Let's go,
Thank you all so
Andrew.
much. Let's drink some beer. That'd be illegal. I see some young people here. I think we have some time for some questions. Do you have a mic, Christina? Go ahead and throw it at someone. I'm kidding. Let's walk it on over.
Let me just first say I've been to 2 town halls so far. I went to Telsey's. This energy's way better. You have much more charisma, so thank you for that. It's a much better atmosphere overall. I love the idea for UBI. I've seen it work in other countries, and I feel like it could really work for us.
Yes.
My big worry is the potential cuts it could have for Medicare and other disabilities and other social services like that. I'm a pro wrestler, and I have friends who are also...
No way you are. That's so cool. What's your wrestling name?
Crispin Coles.
All right. I'm going to do this because I'm a fan generally. Can you cut a wrestling promo for us?
Well, let me tell you something, brother. The UBI, it sounds like a great idea, but it might cut social services. But my big worry is I've seen friends who have taken falls, don't have other jobs, are living on disability, and their lives, like their legs, are in shambles. So I worry if the UBI comes, but it cuts other services, what that could do for my friends, and what your plan is to keep Medicare for all and other social services intact.
Thank you for this question. I love it so much. The last thing I would ever do is weaken existing social services and safety net. We have to go the other direction and strengthen our healthcare system, provide universal healthcare for all Americans, including your friends who I know have a very tough, risky job. We have so much money that's being spent in our healthcare system right now, but it's not actually making us stronger and healthier. I'm a numbers guy. We're spending $3.6 trillion on our healthcare, twice as much as other countries, and our results are worse. So you have to ask yourself, well, why the heck is that happening? And then you dig into the numbers and you realize that the goals of the system are to make the drug companies, the device companies, and the private insurance companies oodles and oodles of money. And so your friends who are uninsured get left by the wayside. So we have to have health coverage for all Americans as a basic right of citizenship. And I know that we can afford it because we have so much money already getting spent in the system in ways that are not actually designed to make us stronger and healthier. So anyone who looks around and says, we're gonna get the money for this, I'm the numbers guy. Do you all remember voting for the $4 trillion bailout of Wall Street 10 years ago? Yeah. Do you remember anyone looking around and being like, where are we gonna get the money? Where are we gonna get the money? No, when it was game time for the banks, they were like, here's $4 trillion. And there was a crucial choice then, which was either recap the banks or keep us in our homes, keep Americans in our homes. And they chose the banks. The same thing is playing out in our healthcare system on a scale every day. It's like, what are we gonna choose? The profits and bottom lines of the drug companies, the insurance companies, and the device manufacturers, or the health of our people? And it's time to choose the health of our people. We have the resources, and I will make it happen as president. On a personal level, too, I'm also for unionization and protections for contractors like pro wrestlers. I know it. Like pro wrestlers, MMA fighters, contractors of every type, they're just getting exploited. And you're doing it for, like your love of the sport and the form, but also for your paycheck and survival, and for our entertainment. Like, as someone who's a fan, I don't want to watch people get injured and worry it's like, oh my gosh, they can't provide for themselves when they get home. Like, we have to make that right.
Thank you.
You can tell I'm a pro wrestling fan. I don't know. It's like, you know, to give some insight into the Yang household when I was growing up. You know what was not going on in the Yang household when I was growing up? You're gonna be president someday. That was not the conversation. It was more like, do you think Macho Man could take out Ravishing Rick? Christina?
I think I may have caught something on the Rogan show that you were talking about opting into the $1,000 with people, say, who are already receiving Social Security or general assistance. Is there some more clarification with people who are already receiving?
Sure.
Yeah, okay.
So the plan is to make the Freedom Dividend universal and opt-in. Because you don't want to like force it on people, though I would suggest that the vast majority of Americans would enjoy $1,000 a month. And we've actually been giving $1,000 a month to about 13 families around the country for the last number of months, including a family right here in New Hampshire for the past year. But you make it optional, and then if you do opt in, you'd be choosing to forego a certain narrow band of programs that are cash and cash-like assistance. Now, I've talked to the people who are on these cash programs, which essentially are like food stamps and heating oil and things like that, cash subsidies, and they say that they prefer unrestricted cash because right now the cash only goes to certain things. And they live in fear of losing their benefits at any moment because those benefits tend to have requirements around income thresholds and to some extent reporting requirements. Sometimes they even have case managers. So the goal is to not leave anyone worse off. I would never take anything away from someone who's relying upon it. But then if you have this $1,000 dividend as a possibility, then most people, including people who are currently receiving various benefits, would take it. If you're receiving in excess of that, for example, because you're like disabled or something along those lines, then I would never touch that. If anything, I want to increase those benefits over time because we have to make this economy work for everyone. Now, one of the jokes I tell is that if you have someone like Jeff Bezos, who's worth $115 billion right now, post-divorce, no judgment, but just a statement of fact, some people are like, why does he deserve $1,000 a month? And then I'm like, look, we're gonna get hundreds of millions, maybe billions from his $1 trillion business on the way in. And then so he's worth $115 billion right now. If you were to increase the income tax rate to 70, 75, 80%, how much of his $115 billion would we get?
No.
Next to none of it. Because he's not dumb enough to pay himself $5 billion a year and then let us tax 85% of it. It's like sitting around in his business. So we get it when it goes into his business. And then when he takes $1 billion out every year to buy rocket ships to Mars, which is what he does every year, then you also take some then. And then if you go to Jeff and say, hey, you want $1,000 a month, then the whole thing's like trivial. It's just trying to remind him he's an American. So that's why you make it universal, no stigma attached to it, no income reporting requirements. This is what they did in Alaska. In Alaska, everyone's getting it from the richest Alaskan to the poorest Alaskan, and it's wildly popular and durable as a result.
What's your perspective on the current issue in the Middle East with Iran and Iraq? And the rhetoric of Mr. Trump?
I'm on the record saying that killing General Soleimani was a mistake. We should not have done it because it was a disproportionate response to what had gone before. 75% of Americans want nothing to do with war in Iran. So then you have to look around and say, okay, who has the authority to declare war on another country? In our Constitution, it's very clear. It's for Congress to declare war. So what has happened over the last 19 years such that Congress is not touching any of these military decisions? It's because Congress has ceded the authority to declare war to the president in the 2001 authorization of the use of military force. They essentially said it's all yours. So as president, I would pull us back from the brink of war in Iran and the Middle East, de-escalate tensions, reinvest in our alliances and partnerships abroad, and then push the power to declare war back to Congress where it belongs in the Constitution. It was James Mattis, Secretary of Defense, who said if you invest more in diplomats, then you can spend less on ammunition, and that is where we should go. That's where I would lead as president. It's also the case that we spent over $1 trillion in Iraq, $6 trillion in the Middle East. And I've talked to hundreds, even thousands of military veterans who came home and have struggled with health issues and injuries and PTSD and a way forward. The cost to us of these conflicts is almost incalculable. And this is not what Americans want. We should be much more restrained and judicious about how we're putting our troops into harm's way. We should be treating them much better after they get home. To me, their enlistment starts when they enlist, and then it doesn't end until the day they die. And we should be taking some of these resources, the $700 billion we're spending on the military-industrial complex, and spend it on things that would actually make us stronger and more secure. What are the threats of this age? Other countries, yes, but climate change, AI and cybersecurity, loose nuclear material, military drones, unfortunately. There are now 30,000 military drones in the hands of 95 different state and non-state actors. So there was a period when we had drone superiority, and then now you're reaching more drone parity. So these are some of the biggest threats upcoming, and an extra aircraft carrier doesn't necessarily secure you against AI hacking or climate change. So we have to be smarter about how we're spending this $700 billion a year and use it on things that are actually going to improve our safety over time.
All right. We're going to take one more question to make sure folks can spend a little time with them on the way out, the selfies and all, and get us to Merrimack tonight. If you want more of that, you get that at the high school at 7:30. Let's take one more question.
You're gonna follow us and be like, not enough. To the high school with us. I mean, I'd appreciate that. It would be like, this high school auditorium not big enough. Who's the question? Sorry, go ahead, Miss.
I just came from Merrimack High School. If I'd known you were going there, I would have stayed there. I'm a teacher, and as a teacher, my question to every candidate is what you think about education for our young people. I don't want all young people to get a free pass. I don't think it does them any good. I think that they have to learn to work for what they get, and I want to know what you feel about education in the United States.
First, let's give her a round of applause for teaching our kids. What level of kids do you teach?
I taught high school for 10 years, and I'm now teaching tech ed in middle school.
Wow, so incredible. That's awesome. I've got two kids, 4 and 7. One's autistic, the other one's in public school. And I have to say I'm so grateful to their teachers every day. So here are some big picture thoughts on education, how we can help. Number one, we should pay teachers more. Yeah, and that's not just a feel-good thing, that's in the data. A good teacher is worth your weight in gold in improved educational outcomes for kids. Number two, we should get more teachers into our schools. Data also shows that having excessively high student-to-teacher ratios isn't ideal for results, and we have many, many more special needs kids coming up that require more individualized attention, kids like my boy. Number three, we should lighten up on the standardized tests. Do you all know that we invented the SAT during World War II as a means to identify which kids not to send to the front lines? And now we treat our kids like every year is wartime. Does that make sense? It's like, oh, we have this wartime test. You know what we should do? Give it to every kid. And it's like, it's distorting teacher behavior in various ways. We have to let teachers do your job. We have to be realistic that college is not for every kid. That right now, 33% of Americans are going to graduate from college. And we need to invest in apprenticeships, vocational programs, and technical education. Right now, only 6%. I can't wait to be our president. I'm going to team up with Mike Rowe of Dirty Jobs and walk around being like, hey, these jobs are awesome. Only 6% of American high school students are in technical or vocational tracks. In Germany, that's 59%. Think about that gulf. So we have to try and get our 6% up because these jobs are very stable and resilient and lucrative, and there's a massive need because any employer in that space has an undersupply of trained workers. As part of saying that not every kid's going to go to college, that we have to try and make it so that high school is more relevant for kids who are not going to pursue further education. So that would include things like financial literacy, social and emotional learning. You know what really correlates to success in life? Arts education. Like, that's in the data. It's not like arts, oh, that's a luxury. It's like actually arts is like one of the best things you can do for a kid in terms of their life outcomes. So we should be investing in these things at the high school level and even earlier. And I'm not someone who thinks that we should be, again, saying like free college for everyone, because that's only going to apply to a third of your kids. So that's one reason why the freedom dividend is so powerful, because if you want to go to college, partially paid for, great. If you want to go to trade programs, partially paid for, great. You want to take care of loved ones, pursue something independently, figure it out, that's also great. You know, like we have to be able to put real agency in our kids' hands. I feel like what we've done with our kids is really, it's done them a disservice on so many levels, and we have to make it right as soon as possible. But thank you for the work you do with our kids every day.
All right. All right, ladies and gentlemen, give it up for Andrew Yang.
Let's go, Andrew!
We're gonna win this whole thing.
Yeah!
I want him to be my hype man. We can come out and be like, ladies and gentlemen, introduce him. Forget Steve, he's fired, you're hired.
Hey, I know you can kick my, you know what? Okay. Who wants a selfie? That's what I figured. Here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna line it up right down the center over here. We'll have Andrew down here so you get a pretty good backdrop. Obviously, we'll keep the line going. We appreciate everybody's patience. We thank you for being here tonight. Let's give it up for the shares one more time.
Yeah!
We need your help volunteering.